What is going on, everybody? AHS Rules back again with another video, and I will go ahead and tell you now, this is more than likely going to be a long video as it is a 2-in-1. Now, last year, around this time, I made a very similar video, has the exact same title except for one little difference. That being said, this video, I'll be talking about the things that I want to see happen in WWE after WrestleMania 40. Now, when I was referring to this being a 2-in-1, I'm also going to go over the results of last year's video, in which I said there's a slight difference in the title, because last year, obviously, would have been things I wanted to see after WrestleMania 39. So, recapping, I want to talk about the things I want to see in WWE after WrestleMania 40, while also reviewing the things I wanted to see after WrestleMania 39. So, it might be a long video. I do have planned to write down the time of which, so it's a bit easier for you. So, right off the rip, let's go over the results of last year's video. I'm not going to try to spend too much time on them because everything's in the past. So, the one thing, I said 8 things that I wanted to see. Out of the 8, there is one that absolutely did not happen. The other 7 somewhat either happened or somewhat happened. So I'll clarify when I get to them. But the one thing that did not happen was the thumbnail of the video, was the title of the video. I wanted WWE to sign free agent Jay White. And it was hilarious that he signed with AEW the week after WrestleMania. And I will say, he has had a very up and down run in AEW, mainly down, and I have said it several times. I've never went into detail about it just because, I feel it's a bit funnier that way, but I've always said I think he would have been better fit for WWE. Even people in AEW have even said that now, which, again, kind of adds to that, but it is what it is. He's in AEW. Like I said, he's definitely had great moments in the promotion. He's main evented a pay-per-view. He had a great match with himself and Juice Robinson versus FTR. But again, there's a lot of things that have not worked out that well, but I can only say it's up from here. So there's that. Next, I wanted to see the return of Big E, Naomi, and Randy Orton. Backtracking, out of those 3, 2 did, 1 didn't. The one that hasn't is Big E, but I said it then, I'll say it now. I just want the best for him and safety and prioritizing his health. So if he never comes back to the WWE, I don't see any problem with that, and that's perfectly fine. Now, with Randy Orton and Naomi, Randy Orton didn't come back until November. That's fine. He's back. Hooray. Naomi, here's the crazy part. She hadn't even debuted or wrestled in TNA/Impact when I made that video. So the fact that she had a great run there and then still is now back in WWE is a bit insane to me. So there's that. Next, I wanted them to call up Braun Breaker/Carmelo Hayes. Braun Breaker is signed to the SmackDown roster, still appears in NXT because he's one half of the tag team champions. Carmelo Hayes has had a handful of matches on the main roster, but again, still appears in NXT. And I won't lie, I kind of would have probably took this back the more I think about it, because essentially that was NXT's, it's been NXT's top 2 stars the last year plus. So, and NXT has been very enjoyable over that past year, 2 plus. So, it probably would not have been the best for WWE to take the top 2 stars in NXT and then put them on the main roster, even though more than likely is going to happen at some point. So, I probably would have took that back, but it is what it is. One that I was outright right about, heel Drew McIntyre. This time last year, Drew McIntyre didn't really have a direction, and we needed to see some change happen, and slowly but surely has kind of went to a heelish way, and it has benefited him greatly as he is scheduled to have a World Heavyweight title match at WrestleMania. Speaking of the World Heavyweight Championship, this is one that you could say I got wrong, but the message that I wanted to have essentially happened, and it was one that a lot of people wanted to have, and that was vacate the Universal Championship or even the WWE Championship to that point. We just wanted to see the Raw brand have a World Championship. They went about that by resurrecting and bringing back the World Heavyweight Championship and unifying the Universal and WWE Championship. So the initial message didn't work out, but in the grand scheme of things, it did. So there's that. And I have enjoyed the World Heavyweight Championship it's almost been a year, so in this year run. Money in the Bank winners. I got one right. I got one wrong. For the women, I wanted Io Sky to win. I think everybody wanted Io Sky to win. And for the men, same thing. I wanted LA Knight to win. I think everybody wanted LA Knight to win, and he did not. I'll talk a little bit more about the Money in the Bank a little bit later on, because I'm going to do the same thing for this year. Next, I wanted them to push Gunther to the moon. I think every video that I talk about WWE in, I always say that Gunther is my favorite competitor there right now, and he, over the course of this year, became the longest running Intercontinental Champion, and is still the Intercontinental Champion right now. But I did have to add a little extra note, and I said he should win the King of the Ring. At that time, King of the Ring was scheduled to take place, then they changed it to Night of Champions, so I just had to add something to be wrong. And then lastly, I wanted to see the return of the draft. At the time period, the rosters, we had kind of seen all the matchups that we had wanted to see, and some roster change-up needed to happen, and then the draft took place. So we're 6 minutes and 11 seconds in, and now we're going to get... I thought this was going to be a longer video. Again, I might spiel off and start talking a lot more about these things, but I have 6 things wrote in front of me. Last year was 8. This year is 6. Up to like 30 minutes ago it was 5, but I thought of 1. Now, again, this is what I'll say. WWE over this past year has had a lot of good, a lot of bad. But there's not... I've been putting this video off for the month because I'm been trying to think what is something that I really want to see change in WWE. And like I said, it's been a very enjoyable product, especially when you compare it to the previous couple of years, that if I'm trying to change something, it's just very much nitpicking or just asking for too much and thinking about too much. Because I will say, I overthink things a lot. And I will more than likely, again, later down the line, overthink a little bit some more. So I think, again, we've been on the right trail, but there's some things that I'd like to see different. So, thing number 1. This is the most recent thing added to the list, and this will be the what's the best way to put this? I really struggle to get that out. They got one night to do this. Make the night after WrestleMania mean something again. Last year, shooting the breeze, aftermath of WrestleMania, it was hilarious that a majority of that video was me just ranting about the night after WrestleMania Raw because it disappointed. Now, I said it then, I will say it now. It was a decent episode of Raw, but a terrible night after Mania Raw because there was commercials, there was hype all day from WWE themselves saying this is the biggest Raw of the year, a night full of surprises and shocking moments and returns, and none of that. We got Matt Riddle returning. Guess what? He ain't even in the company now. You got Brock Lesnar turning on Cody Rhodes. Again, at the time it was a bit funny. Now it's a bit sad, and he's not even in the company anymore. It just disappointed all around. And again, I couldn't tell you the last good night after WrestleMania Raw because the pandemic screwed us out of 2 of them. Remember, this is a funny thing. Remember 2020? They got me. I watched that episode of Raw. The only thing I remember is they're you won't believe what happened after WrestleMania. And you know what? I didn't believe the Big Show was going to come out and challenge Drew McIntyre, and then technically the main event of WrestleMania ended up being Drew McIntyre, Big Show. I wouldn't believe it. And again, that's disappointment. It sucked. So they have a fresh slate. Again, the night after WrestleMania Raw is just a new beginning in a sort of a sense. So they could do a little bit of anything. And again, I think it needs to mean something again. I was going to say they could do anything this night after WrestleMania and it mean something because the past couple years have sucked. So again, that's the most recent addition to the list that I was if I think more about it, I could think of something again. It's just one night out of the year though. That's where this other stuff could affect a great majority of the year. Now, I talked about Money in the Bank winners last year, so I have who I want to see win this year's. Again, this is a bit funny saying this now because the male competitor still is holding the briefcase. So I'll start off with the women. I think this would be a popular pick closer to the time of the Money in the Bank. Tiffany Stratton, recently added to the main roster, has over-delivered. Delivered it's on the positive side regardless in her matches. So I think, again, closer to time to the Money in the Bank, a lot of people will want to see her win it. Now, I do have an honorable mention, that being Naomi, who I mentioned earlier from last year's list. It's just like Naomi has came back. She's announced in this WrestleMania matchup, which is good, but it's just like nothing she has done is like really stuck out. And again, especially put her in title contention, where both winning the Money in the Bank briefcase would do both of those things. But either one of those. Now, the men's division. Again, this is a bit funny. No, it's a bit sad. It's a bit sad and funny. I made a whole video talking about who should win the Money in the Bank briefcases after the whole video last year. It is closer to the time of the Money in the Bank. Again, I might have to do that this year. But I suggested Edge, which, again, the funny part is he wasn't even in the match, and he's not even in the company now. But the whole message I was delivering is the men's Money in the Bank briefcase has been a joke. The winner prior to that cashed in on a mid-card championship and lost. And just, what the F? It was just very much that. And I said with Edge, him winning the Money in the Bank briefcase can give him his last World Championship run and bring prestige back to the briefcase and holding the briefcase, because he was the first person to do it. He's the one that made it a big deal. Showcase what it was supposed to be. Now, the person I'm going to suggest now very much fits in that same role. He's not the first person, but he has done it twice. CM Punk. Now, the reason I am suggesting this is I wouldn't mind seeing CM Punk be world champion again. I think a lot of people would have issue and question it because of health and longevity. But, again, he's won the Money in the Bank briefcase twice. He had good title runs once he won the briefcase, and it kind of would showcase what being Mr. Money in the Bank would mean. Now, again, the funny thing about this, again, is the current briefcase holder has not done that. Damian Priest, he's had several opportunities to cash it in, and he's failed to do it. And it's going to be hilarious that he's going to, I don't even know if he's going to cash in. I was going to say, it's going to be funny when he cashes in. It's just like, again, been a WTF moment, where I feel CM Punk, who his main two rivals right now are going to be fighting for the World Championship in Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins. He fits right into the mold. Again, this is July. We got to wait till July for this. A lot can change till then. But I would suggest CM Punk. I gave her an honorable mention for the women. I will give her an honorable mention for the men. One man that has been very popular, and this would be a major up to him, Jey Uso. That's my honorable mention. Now, speaking of the Judgment Day, I don't mind the faction. It's popular. I'm not going to say they should break up, but I will say that they should lose the tag team title. So I'm giving a 2-1 for this suggestion. Split the tag team championships again. At least just get them off the Judgment Day. You got 5 teams competing for them at WrestleMania. I don't know each of them, so that's an L on me. But the Judgment Day have had a long-ass tag team title reign that they probably shouldn't have, especially again because Damian Priest is Mr. Money in the Bank. Wow. Did he need both and the tag team titles? I just want the tag team titles off the Judgment Day. And while we're at it, split the tag team titles. And again, this is kind of a good for me because if the Judgment Day or the tag team champions a year from now, that would be nuts. But I'm like, a year from now, I can at least say I was half right. But I think everybody wants the tag team titles back to normal. Again, especially because like none of the other the women's tag team titles go from brand to brand. And I guess it kind of is understandable that the men and women's tag team titles could do that, but there's enough men's tag teams on both brands for it to do it, where with the women's tag teams, there's not. It's understandable why the women's tag team titles go brand to brand. It doesn't make sense for the men's. I spent too much time talking about that. Now, The Rock. Let's get to The Rock. WrestleMania main eventer, The Rock. I had a rule on my channel. Until this man actually showed up on WWE TV, I was not going to mention him, because for the longest time, the talk was, well, The Rock's going to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, which again was a bit hilarious. But it's just like, we spent so many years talking about this. It again is hilarious at the time that it could have happened. We didn't want it, but that's a story for a different video. But I'm like, he's not showing up. He hasn't showed up. I want to talk about the people that actually do show up. And I said, once he shows up, I will talk about him. And guess what? He has showed up a lot more than I would have ever expected him to. That being said, WrestleMania, I have said that I've came around to the tag team match, Rock and Roman versus Seth and Cody. I'm still a bit iffy on it, but we're a week out. It is what it is. I'm not that against it. I don't know what The Rock's schedule is going to be after WrestleMania. He's been very committed in this time period, and he's gave us great moments. But there's still a lot of moments left. So I'm going to suggest 3 Rock matchups or moments. Now, when I say moments, I'll get to it when I mention the individual. Rock and Roman Reigns. It's the match everybody wanted. We came very close to having it. It would be hilarious, again, if we don't get it. But at some point down the line, we're more than likely going to get it. The way that this WrestleMania has been built, The Rock and Cody Rhodes would be a great matchup and a big-time matchup. And a lot of people were saying, hey, is this the match that's happened at WrestleMania, Rock and Cody Rhodes? Which, more than likely, it kind of would have made, I was going to say, it would have made sense if they did Cody and Rock night 1 and then Cody, but y'all don't care. That doesn't make sense. Now, I'm not suggesting The Rock have a match with this man, but I at least want a segment between these two, because since The Rock has been back, he, besides that Jinder Mahal segment, which again is a bit hilarious that this is kind of the start of this whole thing, but since The Rock has been back, he's mainly been worried about the bloodline, and we have not seen him interact with the rest of the WWE roster. And there's one individual that a lot of people compare to The Rock. Now, obviously not main event stature and match-wise and just history and lineage, but what they do on the mic, and that's LA Knight. Now, again, since The Rock has been back, LA Knight, I'm not going to say it's felt like an afterthought. A lot of people do think that. But if LA Knight and The Rock can be face-to-face in the ring at the same time, I think it could be a very great segment and moment and booster for LA Knight. Now, again, a lot of people are saying LA Knight hasn't felt the same since The Rock's been there because everything LA Knight does, The Rock does 10 times better. Put LA Knight in there with The Rock, and it'd be a true test of things. But the main thing I was getting at is we need to get Rock and Roman Reigns. That was kind of the main thing. If they do Rock and Cody, I think a lot of people would be down for it. But I also do want to see The Rock interact with other members of the WWE roster as well if he is back more. He's not going to be back full-time. If he was, that would be nuts. But while he is around, interact with the rest of the WWE roster, the top name being LA Knight. As now we get to the last note, and I mentioned earlier, I am an overthinker. This is something that I've been overthinking for over a year now, but again, more recently since the Royal Rumble. Now, I'm going to throw out a bunch of things, and then I'm going to get to the how I would solve it part. But the question I have, and I had this question last year, we didn't get it answered. We could get it answered this year. If Cody Rhodes wins the WWE Championship, does he then move to SmackDown? And if that is the case, what the hell happens to Raw? Because they are losing their top star. Now, again, when I was talking about this, and I was thinking about it since the Royal Rumble, they were really going to be screwed because at that time, Seth Rollins was going to be out with injury. And I thought after WrestleMania, he was going to take some time off. And the guy that would have filled the void of both of those, and CM Punk, is definitely injured. And is still, he appeared once. He's going to appear a couple more times. But he's not there. So who the hell is going to be the top face/star of Raw if their top 3 are not there? Now, again, more than likely, A, Cody Rhodes is going to appear on both shows, which is somewhat understandable. Or B, they're going to do the draft again, and then the rosters are set. Now, my issue/dilemma there is, A, WWE, mainly SmackDown, have been making a big deal about signing free agents because SmackDown have signed Braun Breaker and they have signed Jade Cargill. It'd be hilarious if they did not get to have either of those on their roster that long, and then there's a draft and they can lose them like that. And B, a draft isn't needed as much as it was this time last year. Because there's still some matchups and things that have not translated and taken place over the course of this year. So, and I think a draft might happen later in the year when the TV deals change. or, some change-up needs to happen. So my ultimate suggestion would be trades / the 2005 draft. Now, what I mean by trades is WWE have tried to do this sport-centric thing over the past however long, and trades happen in all sports. Now, I'm going to use the NBA as a better example because in other sports, most of the time it's a player gets traded for picks, or in the NBA, majority of the time it's player traded for a player. Now, I'm not outright suggesting the trades because this might be, again, a WWE 2004 trade / draft scenario where Triple H got traded for Booker T and the Dudleys, and everybody's like, oh my God, SmackDown got fleeced. So I'm not doing that. I'm not even putting myself in that position, but I'm going to throw some names out there, and I would tell you why I want to see them on that brand now, and you could put 2 and 2 together on how a trade package could come together. So obviously, the big one is Cody Rhodes on SmackDown because he should be their world champion, the WWE champion. He's going to be on SmackDown. Now, I could put out and suggest Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins also move to SmackDown, but it's just kind of, I'm just throwing that as a suggestion. Raw really needs these guys. AJ Styles, who the main reason is I want to see him go after the World Championship on Raw, because he has not held that championship. A majority of the roster has not held the championship because it just recently came back. Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, who are supposed to be this great group, but have just not really done much over the course of this year. And I'm already, again, in the mindset that Drew McIntyre is going to be the world champion. So a Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre feud makes sense. And again, Bobby Lashley hasn't held this world championship. And with the Street Profits being on Raw, it would make sense if Bianca Belair is on Raw as well, for the obvious reason. And Bianca Belair, we have not gotten the Bianca Belair Rhea Ripley matchup that, I'm not going to say it was teased the night after Mania Raw last year, but they did cross paths and we were really thinking about it. And Bianca's done extremely lot on SmackDown, even though people are still going to be clamoring for this Jade Cargill match, which just changed brands, then that was that. So ultimately, my suggestion is that we get some trades, because the draft isn't really necessary, but if you do a draft, they should do it the 2005 way, where each week a different superstar changes brands that way, because the whole roster doesn't need to change up. And now we get to the last part that I somehow completely skipped over, but I had to suggest it, because I suggested it last year, and we're going to continue it and add a little bit more to it. The last suggestion, Gunther. Continue pushing this man, my favorite competitor in the WWE. CM Punk might have something to say about that, but I'm going to stick with my guy, Gunther. Now, the suggestion that I had last year, I suggested he win King of the Ring. The tournament didn't happen. Y'all can do it this year, and then I'm right a year later. But even better, I want this man to be World Heavyweight Champion. We've got a year for that to take place. I would be shocked in the course of this year if he does not either challenge for the World Championship or become the World Heavyweight Champion. But I mainly want this because, and I might be wrong, off the top of my head, I want him to unify the World Heavyweight Intercontinental Championship, because the 2 people that I know, and again, I should have Googled this, I should have looked this up. The 2 people I know that held the World Championship and the Intercontinental Championship at the same time were Triple H and the Ultimate Warrior. And in both cases, they ended up vacating. Well, the Ultimate Warrior vacated the Intercontinental title. With Triple H, it ended up being retired for half a year. Where Gunther has went through a whole lot of competitors, and I just don't think anybody comes close to him for beating the Intercontinental Championship. So ultimately, him vacating and moving on to the World Championship would justify the end for his Intercontinental title run, and then we could finally get a lot more people becoming Intercontinental Champion and challenging for the Intercontinental Championship, because he's the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. I'll say it. He's definitely top 3. I'll give Razor Ramon some credit, but he's up there. You can't deny that. So him being world champion in the course of this year is the main point that I want to say. The main reason I'm saying that is because it kind of gives a proper end to his Intercontinental title run. So that is it for this video. I'll say, like I said, I've been preparing for this video for like a month, and like I said, WWE has been very enjoyable over this past year, and it kind of, I'm not gonna say it was a struggle to come up with a list, but it's just like, if I was suggesting like some things, it would very much be nitpicking, but these are things that like I definitely want to see happen. Now, are all these things going to happen? Probably not. That's not the end of the world. It is what it is. But this is going to be hopefully a very fun week. It's the biggest week in the WWE year, obviously, with WrestleMania. I will have my WrestleMania 40 predictions up at some point. So, and if I think of like anything else I would like to see happen, I'll comment it down below. If there are things you want to see happen in WWE over the course of this year, you can comment them down below. Like, I couldn't really like put my finger on like any free agents for WWE to sign, so that's why I didn't suggest them sign any. And even if they did, they'd probably just go to AEW, and I would just be wrong about that. So I will point that out as well. But if there's anything you'd want to say, put it in the comments down below, and I'll more than likely respond to it. But if not, I do thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you stay safe, you like and subscribe. We are on the last week to the road to WrestleMania. So I'll see you in the next video. I'm about to sneeze, so I'm going to cut it off now.